Southland, 1 week at a time. SCV Chat starts now.
You know, despite the fact that Jesse is a friend and that he has been a good friend of mine, and the fact that, you know, lately some things have changed and that ain't hard to define. You know, Jesse's got himself a girl, but I do not want to make her mine because she has a mustache.
All right. Well, goodbye, guys.
Well, hey, that's a good start to the month of July. Is breaking moose already. Good evening, everybody. Before we get started, the views and opinions expressed on this broadcast are not necessarily those of the SCV, its GEC, its nor any division brigades, camps, or other subsidiaries, strictly those of us expressing them. And everybody knows that she does have a mustache.
I'm over here trying to share our episode out, which everybody should be doing right now, by the way. And that's just the first thing I hear in my ear today, and I really don't know how to deal with that.
Yeah, do what I used to do. Drink. Hey! Or slap people.
Or Jefferson Davis says slap people.
Maybe, possibly. But he doesn't. Good evening to Willard D. Owens from Suffolk, Virginia. Guten Abend, here, Dr. Mitchum. German back at you. John, good evening. Faversham to Carl. Al, good evening. Already said Guten Tag or Guten Abend to Dr. Mitchum. Alan, hello. Mark Tillis, how are you? Tony Griffin, nice to see you in the chat. Look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. Hello, Todd from California. David Pope, I'm glad that it's a beautiful evening in the Valley of East Tennessee. I hope it's not hot like it is here in Mississippi. Kyle Thompson, yeah, you're on, Tom. Hello, Susie. That's all you're getting. Jason Lloyd, hello. Horace from YouTube, from Utah. And yeah. So good evening and happy July 1st. It is the beginning of a
new month.
Yeah, it is beginning of a new fiscal year for the state of Mississippi.
Oh yeah.
That's we made it. Trying to think of what else. Of course, you know, leading up to the 4th of July, that is this upcoming Thursday, which we will not be on. Look around will not be on because it's 4th of July. We're going to be doing.
Do you want to film that day? Do you want to spend your 4th of July with me?
Not really. I love you and all, and I love you like the little brother I never wanted. But no.
That's fair.
No.
I can come to Jackson.
Or you could not. Ooh, Kurt, that makes me hurt that it's 102 in Fort Worth. And yeah, Susie's going to be, I'm not going to say the age because she would kill me if I really did. Hello, Bobby Van Zant from Florida.
25?
Florida. Sure.
Susie's turning 25.
Again.
Oh, gosh.
For the 18th time.
We'll try to wish you a happy birthday on the we'll film a quick happy birthday for Biscuit.
She's gonna kick your ass.
Good old Biscuit.
Yeah.
That comment is about to end.
Yeah. Just remember. National Reunion is
August, right?
The what?
I don't have. Y'all aren't. She's coming to. Oh no.
Oh yeah, and remember
That's
where y'all are. Yeah. remember where you're going to be that Monday night leading up to reunion.
Oh, she's gonna smother me.
You remember, and that Tuesday night leading up to reunion.
She's gonna smother me in my sleep.
and who has to make our chat awards for reunion?
Oh, I love you, Miss Susie.
Yeah.
Carl is turning 18.
No,
birthday.
Yeah.
The lovely Carl Jones.
Hello, Paul Gramley Jr. All right, well, we have killed enough time. We are not doing a Veteran of the Week because we have a lot of ground to cover tonight. Because it's, and I forgot to do the spin generator before the show started, so sorry. But you can still continue to send those in, but we're going to take a break from them this week because we of course have some very important things to talk about. Guys, again, National Reunion is coming up here in a couple of weeks. If you have not, get with your camp members on the constitutional amendments and amendments to the change standing orders. Get on those.
Speaking of things that people need to start doing, is if you haven't already, it is also dues season.
Yes.
And contrary to popular belief, you don't have until August. That's a grace period. Everybody, please try to send your dues in if you can by the end of July. So make sure you send in your dues. I know all divisions and camps are different when it comes to their dues, but national dues are $35. So please be sending those in.
Yeah. Paul Gramling, no, we're not going to be on the Monday of National. We are going to use those days because we'll be traveling as and taking some time for ourselves. We've never been to we're going to Savannah. Moose, you've never been to Savannah, right?
I think I have, but I mean,
Okay.
I've been to a lot.
Yeah, Moose doesn't remember ever having gone to Savannah. I've never been to Savannah. There's a lot of historical sites and stuff like that we want to see, as well as filming some other content.
Oh yeah, I've been to Savannah.
Okay,
That took
that's
me
nice.
about like 3-4 years ago.
Well, clearly, Moose, it left such an impression in Moose's mind.
I hope he's not watching. He's going to be like, I did not spend my money well.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're going to maybe not, David. Like I said, we're going to be filming some off the air content. We've got a plan of stuff, plan of a couple places. Fort Pulaski is on our list. But we're only there for Monday evening and just into Tuesday. We're going to be at the pre-GEC meeting, provided, that there are no wrecks on the way in between Savannah and Charleston. But we will be replaying the candidates interview, things.
Yes.
Hey, good for you, John Delaney. Mine are too. You know why? Because I'm a life member on every level.
I'm about to send in my camp dues.
Yeah.
Because I'm also a life member. Hey, it's a great feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially if you are a younger person, and you expect to have some type of longevity. It's really, really good.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, honestly. I not trying to pat myself on the back, but an idea if you're already a life member, try to still donate a little bit of money to the SCV to help them out.
Yeah, or pay if you have somebody in your camp that's struggling. Retention rates are important.
Yeah, that's a great point, Connor.
Sponsor a member.
Yeah, I'm hoping to sponsor one soon myself.
Well, I have two that I help sponsor and a cadet.
Ooh.
Jason N. Lloyd said he just got word a couple weeks ago that his camp will be hosting the Virginia Division reunion next year. Hey, that's
congratulations.
Cool. Yeah, that is really cool. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of fun though.
I'm about to say you probably enjoy it more after the fact than during it.
Amen.
Doing the bull dance, feeling the flow, working it.
He's going to regret sending that to us. Carl's never going to again. And I don't know where I'm going to be without my Carl.
Hi, Jason Boshears, Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, for another couple weeks, and then
Jason, don't fire us.
And then pass command, and then pass Commander-in-Chief for
the most sought out title. Passed
2 years after that, at least, depending on how the constitutional amendments go. Remember, again, talk about the constitutional amendments with your camps. If you're a delegate, remember your delegate form. Remember to have your delegate form signed by your camp adjutant and or camp commander and register.
Yes.
You can tell that I have worked credentials before once or twice.
I only did it once, and I'm pretty sure I guess I was so bad they never asked me to do it again. And I am running errands for Jason. I'm getting his coffee and his little T-Rex crackers. And there's where I get fired.
Listen. If at this point,
actually, we're going to get fired next Thursday.
No,
Do you
probably.
remember what next Thursday is?
Yeah, I remember.
Okay.
His episode.
It's Jason's episode next Thursday.
But definitely, hey, Katie Calhoun. Caitlin Calhoun. Caitlin. I apologize for saying your name wrong, and then Moose following up because he's a parrot.
100%.
Need some help with some Pleasant Hill stuff. So if you'll PM us, would appreciate it. So anyway, without getting further off topic, we need to go ahead and pay the bills for the evening. Ooh. Really quickly, this year's title sponsor, key sponsor for SCV Chat is Creative Cockades. Research, documentation, quality work, and personal customer service. CreativeCockades.company.site. She has a bunch of great stuff. Bunch of great cockades. Great ways to show your support for Southern independence, just like they did in 1860. Again, my views and opinions. She's got different ones of the South made up, different historical ones, including this beautiful Jeff Davis, especially if you saw the debacle that happened last week. My views, my opinion. Right man in the right place, our first president. So she's got those. She also has these beautiful UCV replica cockades with General Lee's picture. I'm going to message her and see if she can actually put my ancestor in there instead of General Lee for that one. But she does have the morning cockades where you can put, if you have a picture of your ancestor, him in there. And of course, if you have a heroine in your ancestry, picture of her, put that in there. Good for UDC, SCV, OCR chapters, all that good stuff. Moose.
And last but not least, ARB.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
I'm putting up our website to pay the bills, Connor.
What are you doing?
Well, I'm hitting the support us tab.
There's a support us tab? Wait. First of all, we have a website. What's our website?
Our website is www.scvchat.com. And we have a lot of cool things on there. We have from SCV news, SCV chat news, to just heritage news, episodes, some of our favorite, our links to our podcast platforms. You can also watch
you can't watch a podcast.
Semantics. So
semantics matter. It's the difference between, hey, let's eat grandma's for dinner, or hey, let's eat grandma's for dinner. I mean, there's a big difference between the two. Grammar and semantics matter.
Well, you can listen to the podcast on the website, the most recent 5 episodes, or you can go to our many platforms. Just again, hit on episodes and click podcasts.
Go ahead and click that really quickly. Go ahead and click that.
All right.
Let's see where we are. Didn't work.
There it is.
There it is.
It takes a second to load the podcasts.
Oh, wait. You mean Hearth and Home from last week is already up there?
Oh, yes.
Huh.
You can also listen to the lieutenant and commander-in-chief interviews for that office, as well as other episodes that we have up And then, of course, a link to all of our platforms that we are on. So if you want to watch us on Spreaker, just click the star or any other you want.
Watch us on Spreaker.
Listen on Spreaker. You can by clicking the star. And so, yeah, we have our most recent 5 episodes. That's just at our limitations at the moment. But you can go to any platform and listen to every single episode of this season in podcast form, as well as a couple of just made for podcast content. And a couple look-around episodes have been transformed into the realm of podcasting.
Now, if we wanted to be able to grow our Spreaker so you can listen to the podcast, how would people help us with that?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Connor. Of course, sharing is important, commenting, liking stuff when we post it. But in order to grow some of our content that we have, you need to support us on Patreon. It's just $10 a month, and it goes to improving our technology equipment, to the stuff we provide. We've talked about it before. We're only allowed one show on our podcast platform. And so we picked the Monday show to be transformed into a podcast. But if we want to do a more unique podcast, like the book review that we're doing, or a specific, okay, this is just a 5-10-minute episode in the morning. Who would want to listen to us as they drive to work? I don't know. But if you want that, or if you want look around to join the podcast world, we need help. If you want us to grow our website to make it even better, we need some help on Patreon.
We'd have to change the name to Listen Around.
Listen Around.
Maybe that's what we'll call them, the morning show. But anyway, Patreon is our campaign massive fundraising platform. It's $10 a month. Go to scvchat.com, click there. But what else can you do to support us?
Well, if you're wanting to show off your, it's weird to say SCV Chat pride, because we're just two idiots getting to talk about what we love every week. So, I mean, thank you for letting us do that. But
there's one idiot and a moron.
There's one idiot and a moron. We have to make that distinction. Which one is which, we'll let you decide. Yeah. But if you want another way to support us, we do have an online store full of T-shirts. If you want to see the overall store, just click the red SCV Chat T-shirt here, and then scroll down if you want to just browse for a minute.
Wait, that right in 61 because of 76, that would have been a great one to get for 4th of July, or even that Thomas Jefferson one, because Southern history is more than just 1861 to 1865.
True. But Connor, did you know that we have a 10% off deal right now?
Yes, I know, because I set it up.
Yep. On Nathan Bedford Forrest's Attack in All Directions t-shirt for the General's birthday, we have knocked that shirt down 10% off. Make sure you get it by July 13th.
Use code. Use code NBF at checkout. Again, N as in Nathan, B as in Bedford, F as in Forrest, and checkout. Also, remember, we do have the old school logo shirts, the front shirt and back shirt. Several people have been asking about, we're going to get that in a lapel pin. We're going to get it as this. We're going to get it as that. This is the only place right now we know that you can get it. Is available at our on our shop. We got permission to do that because it is a fundraiser for the National Museum. And after National Reunion, those funds will be turned over, and those shirts will no longer be available. So if you want one of those shirts, which if you've never seen one or what the old logo looked like, boom, get it. So I guess, have we paid all the bills, GCB? Yeah, we need to take a commercial break and then get into my favorite Confederate general, personal favorite, William Barksdale. So, all right, let me set everything up, and here we go.
There is a place nestled in the rolling farmland of southern Middle Tennessee. A home constructed in 1837, nearly lost to the ravages of war. Saved by a servant and a Confederate general. A place where families loved and lost. If walls could talk, what stories could be told? If a place, a home, can feel love, loss, pain, surely this is one of those places. Nearby is a more recent structure, and inside are the stories of heroes and heroines, stories of battles won and lost, stories of sacrifices made by the people of its native soil. A place that will tell the true and complete story of the Southland and the war fought for its freedom. From the causes that led to the conflict to the modern-day struggles to protect Southern history. Historic Elm Springs and the Confederate Museum at Elm Springs are the general headquarters for the Sons of Confederate Veterans. A place where the story of the Southland and its historic struggle is preserved and told. Come and discover your history.
Again, thank you to our patrons and to our sponsor for the season, Creative Cockades. Really appreciate it. So, tonight we are talking about the grandest charge ever made. That quote actually came from a federal soldier there who was the recipient of Barksdale and his Mississippians. Specifically, we're going to talk about July 2nd, 1863. Now, why July 2nd, 1863? Well, because today is July 1st. Yeah. Of course. But still, the grandest charge ever made, that was ever made by mortal man. Barksdale's Mississippi Brigade, July 2nd, 1863. Trying to go through my slides here. So very first, of course, we have to put up the picture of the fine gentleman from Mississippi, William Barksdale. And I'll go through a little bit of biography for those of y'all who are not familiar with General Barksdale. Barksdale was born on the 21st of August, 1821 near Smyrna, Rutherford County, Tennessee. His parents were descended of prominent Southerners whose civil and patriotic achievements inspired William at a young age. And he was a very ambitious and intelligent young man. He attended school in Rutherford County. He later pursued a course of classical studies, so Greek, arithmetic, Latin, things like that, from the University of Nashville, which I don't think exists anymore. I know there's a university in Nashville, but not a University of Nashville. But anyway, digress. From one account that I've read, by the age of 13, Barksdale was actually orphaned, and 3 years later, in 1837, at the age of 16, he and his brothers moved to Mississippi, and they settled in the recently formed Lowndes County. If you're not familiar with Lowndes County, Columbus, Mississippi, excuse me, the Golden Triangle area is where that is. And while he was there, like many other Southerners, frontiersmen, and like the Tennessean Andrew Jackson, he began practicing frontier law. Of course, that was before you had to go to law school, get a degree, and then sit for the bar. You could study under an attorney for so many number of years, get proficient, and then sit for the bar. He did that, and he established a very successful legal practice in Columbus, Mississippi. He began prospering, and he invested his capital into land, and eventually his wealth continued to grow. In 1849, he married Narcissa Saunders of Louisiana, and things continued on. In 1844, though, not being content with just being a lawyer planter, he purchased half of the local newspaper, the Columbus Democrat, and became its co-editor. And at that point, he immersed himself in local and state politics and began to consider running for state office. That was interrupted by the outbreak of the Mexican War. Barksdale volunteered and served as, I believe his rank was a captain, and assistant commissary officer for the 2nd Mississippi Infantry Regiment. Went to Mexico, fought in Mexico. In response to the 1851 sectional crisis, Barksdale aligned himself with the more moderate faction of the Democratic Party and tried to guide the state to accept the Compromise of 1850. But that effort, coupled with his recent military service, really pushed him up and above. And in November of 1852, he was elected as a states' rights Democrat to the U.S. House of Representatives. And he would eventually win re-election 3 times and served until 1861. Now, while he was up there, he was a very controversial figure. There's, again, the story of Barksdale. Well, let's backtrack for a second. There's rumor that when my boy Preston Brooks went over to beat the tar out of Sumner, that whole affair. Barksdale is reported at holding some of the Yankee senators off with a pistol. There's the story of him getting onto a fight on the floor of the House of Representatives with the Washburn, or I think it was the Washburn or Washi or something like that, brothers. And Barksdale getting his wig yanked off his head and, snatching the wig back and putting it on backwards. And then, of course, as we kind of alluded to earlier, in the late 1850s, when Davis was senator and Barksdale was a representative, them almost going to a duel and Davis reportedly slapping Barksdale. Again, can't make this stuff up. But still, of course, January 9th, 1861, Mississippi secedes from the Union. Barksdale resigns from Congress and comes home, and is actually selected as commissary officer for the Army of the Republic of Mississippi. Mississippi joins the Confederacy, and he joins the, I believe it was the 13th Mississippi Infantry, and soon elected colonel. That unit is sent up to the Army of Northern Virginia. Barksdale eventually, he fights in all the major campaigns except for 2nd Manassas and 2nd Fredericksburg. But Barksdale really comes to fame with the Battle of Fredericksburg. So I'm going to bring this up really quickly. Actually, I'm going to backtrack for a second. This is Barksdale's sword. I want one just like it. It's currently on display at the Mississippi Department of Archives and History at the Old Capitol Museum.
Guessing he wants me to buy that for him.
No, anybody who's out there and wants to buy me a gift, sword just like that. This is a historical marker of where his plantation stood, again, up in the Golden Triangle. But I digress back to Fredericksburg. So if you remember back in history, this is December of 1862. 2nd Manassas has already happened. The Sharpsburg campaign has already happened. The Army is supposed to be, getting into winter quarters, but Abraham Lincoln decides, hey, I'm going to trust this guy with funny facial hair to be in command of the Army of Potomac because, well, everybody else is getting their butt kicked by Robert E. Lee. So he appoints Ambrose Burnside, who is very cautious, overly cautious. He tries to go and capture Richmond. Lee cuts him off and sets up on the outskirts of the town on Marye's Heights, and the Federals are on the other side of the Rappahannock River. While there, the Federals decide, instead of trying to go around and flank, that, hey, we're going to go ahead and cross the river. Well, here's the thing. Lee takes this fiery bunch of Mississippians and he says, hey, hold the waterfront, hold the riverfront, contest the crossing. That's Barksdale and his Mississippians, Barksdale and his men. Of course, if you remember that scene in Gods and Generals, before the family that, is one of the key points that they're showing for civilian life. They show the Mississippians fighting and fighting block by block, holding them back, holding them back, holding them back. That, of course, is the picture of the sketch of the Federal Crossing. You can see the shots coming from town. Barksdale's Mississippians really kicking butt. This was a picture taken before Fredericksburg. Again, that is the pictures taken from the Federal side looking across. Very, very likely that those are Barksdale's Mississippians in that picture. And we'll talk more about those men later. Barksdale's brigade is charged after, Fredericksburg, after Burnside sends the Federal Army up Murray's Heights over and over and over again. During the Chancellorsville campaign, when Joe Hooker takes over, Barksdale and his men Barksdale is not there. Humphreys has command of the brigade, but Barksdale's men hold the sunken road. A lot of people think that this picture is from First Fredericksburg, and it's not. It is from Second Fredericksburg. That is the look of it after the battle, with Confederate dead lying in the road, Confederate muskets, all that sort of stuff. Actually, some Federal stuff in there, but they held to the best of their ability. And actually, Barksdale gets in a little bit of a newspaper feud with Jubal Early, and things like that. Again, from the accounts that I read, that Barksdale was not present. I mean, yeah, he and Early get into the fight about it, but one of the accounts that I read earlier says that it was actually Humphreys who was in charge of the brigade, and Barksdale was on leave. Anyway. So fast forward though to July of 1863. Robert E. So overall picture of the war effort. In the East, Robert E. Lee is winning victory after victory. Out in the West, things are a completely different story. We've lost Fort Donelson, we've lost Fort Henry, we've lost Corinth, Shiloh. Grant has been trying to take Vicksburg, and he finally gets Vicksburg in a siege. And Robert E. Lee, who's been fighting these battles in Virginia, Virginia's out of food, plain and simple. And Robert E. Lee thinks, well, I can do two things, kill two birds with one stone. Take my army up north, get provisions from the north, wreak some havoc up there, and cause the Washington folks to go crazy, defeat the Army of the Potomac, and then maybe, just maybe, they'll pull the armies out of Mississippi and out of the West to come up here and relieve Vicksburg, stop the Confederacy from getting cut in half. So supply the army and try to get that final victory, but if anything, give some relief to the West. So Lee heads on out. Of course, there's the fight at Brandy Station, and the whole where's Jeb Stuart. We're not going to get into that tonight. We'll touch on it a little bit, but we're not going to get there. So to set it up, July 1st, 1863, the first day fighting happens. I'm going into or General Heath says that he's going into the town to look for shoes. Anyway, that's my. I've been watching Gettysburg. that is my bad impersonation of Major Taylor. But there was no shoe factory. There was no supply of shoes. The thing about Gettysburg is that it controlled 5 major roads going in. It was a wagon hub city. It was a hub city. But without getting to the Stuart things, the first day of Gettysburg happens, and through God's grace, the Confederacy gets a victory. Day one. And in the evening of day one, a council of war is held between Robert E. Lee and the 2nd and 3rd Corps of the A&V. Correct me if I'm wrong, David. I know you will. But pretty much Lee wants to move the other corps. I think A.P. Hill was. I think it was supposed to be Early's Corps or Ewell's Corps around. Hill was supposed to stay in the center, and Longstreet was supposed to, continue, and then they were supposed to hit. They didn't want to do that. The other corps commanders didn't. They suggested that Longstreet need to go on a flanking march and attack, and Lee. Longstreet didn't want to do anything. He wanted to, go get between Washington and the Federals. Lee decides to go in between and make it work. Now, what all does that have to do with day 2? Well, day 1 sets up day 2. Excuse me. So, really quickly, in the either late night or early dawn of July 2nd, Robert E. Lee sends out a reconnaissance and trying to determine where the Federal Army was. And there's a lot of debate between Gettysburg scholars. I'm not a Gettysburg scholar by any means, but there's difference in times of when this one captain rode up to the Union line. But essentially, at some point, he makes it to Big and Little Round Top, and he says that those hills are unoccupied. So Lee says, all right, we're going to go with that plan. Now, before we get into Robert E. Lee's plan, we need to break down Barksdale's chain of command. So, this is Barksdale's chain of command. At the very tip top, we have Robert E. Lee, Commander, Army of Northern Virginia. Beneath him, we have James Longstreet, 1st Corps Commander, Army of Northern Virginia. Beneath him, we have Lafayette McLaws' division. He's the division commander, and then we have Barksdale. So think of it like a piece of the pie. Robert E. Lee is the whole big pie. It's not going to help if y'all see this. The big pie, and then the pie split into thirds, and then it's split into McLaws, Hood, Pickett. So it's split into thirds again. So that's 6th. And then the different brigade commanders. So, we're looking at the brigade level. The only way we could get smaller is looking at the regimental level, which we will in a second. And we will also we will not get into some of the company stuff, but that would be like the smallest, Companies make regiments, regiments makes brigades, brigades makes divisions, divisions make corps, corps make armies. So, but that is Barksdale's chain of command. So Robert E. Lee's idea for first day, his original plan of attack is, and you'll see here, these are assumed force locations of the Federals. Ewell on the Confederate right will go and, Federal right, sorry, will go and demonstrate against Culp's Hill. Anderson and Hill will hold center. Anderson will move forward. But down here at the bottom of the map, you'll see McLaws' name, you'll see Longstreet, and you'll see Hood. So that's Longstreet's corps, the division, or the divisions of McLaws and Hood. They're supposed to go and do a left wheel. That left wheel will go and in Lee's plan, as Anderson's division is going and hitting there at Cemetery Ridge, the left wheel that the Longstreet's corps is doing will start rolling up the flank. So to be exact in his plans, Lee ordered that Longstreet was supposed to launch the surprise attack with 2 divisions straddling and guiding on the Emmitsburg Road. Hood's division would move up the eastern side of the road, Lafayette McLaws on the western side, each perpendicular to it. The objective was to strike the Union Army in an oblique attack, rolling up their flank, collapsing the Union line and Union corps onto each other, and then seizing Cemetery Hill. The 3rd Corps Division of Robert H. Anderson would join the attack against the center of the Union line at Cemetery Ridge at the appropriate time. The plan was based on, again, faulty intelligence. Also, there's something else that happens, and we're going to pause and put a pin into this part of the story. All right. There's a crazy Yankee. Well, there's multiple crazy Yankees, but the one that I'm going to talk about right now, his name is Dan Sickles. Harrison, do you know who Dan Sickles was?
I do not.
Dan Sickles was a politician general from New York. He is the first man who ever got away with murder using the temporary insanity plea in the United States. He found out that his wife, who he was cheating on him, and walked outside, saw her lover, pulled out his pistol, blammo. Oh, I was temporarily crazy. And they believed it. When the war breaks out, Sickles, even though he's a Democrat from New York, decides to support the war effort. Lincoln really loved that because it showed that it was a bipartisan war, so he appointed him as a general. While as a general, again, political appointing, no, and Sickles, I'm brushing over some stuff. The New York militia that became a bunch of different regiments in New York. He ended up paying for them, getting new equipment out of his pocket, a bunch of other stuff. But Sickles, saw the war as a stepping stone for his political career. Lincoln was okay with that. Again, showed bipartisan support, but Sickles actually does a halfway decent job. Whereas other political generals are getting cashiered left and right, Sickles actually gets promoted. He eventually makes his way up to a corps command. Again, think about the breakup of the Army's corps, commander of the 3rd Corps of the Army of the Potomac. So Sickles is, he doesn't like West Pointers, and West Pointers don't like Sickles. And the new commander of the Army of the Potomac is George Meade. Well, Meade orders Sickles to hold so if we go back to the map, there at the end of the line where McLaws and Longstreet are supposed to wheel in and swing in there, that's where Sickles is supposed to be. He's supposed to be continuing on the fish hook. If you've studied anything about Gettysburg, you'll know about the fish hook. Well, Sickles gets to his point in line, and he begins looking out, and he sees that across from him is a rise, a peach orchard. And he's thinking, hey, that ground is better ground than where I am right now. Only thing the Confederates have to do is put some cannons on there, and I'm going to get shelled, and my men are going to get massacred. I'm going to move out. Now, the reason why he's thinking that is because previously at the Battle of Chancellorsville, that's what happened to him. He was at, I believe it was Hazel Grove at Chancellorsville. He was ordered to move back. He begrudgingly moved back. The Confederates put guns up there. We shelled the hell out of them. They ended up losing the battle. Sickles doesn't want to see that happen again, so he goes ahead and moves his entire corps up there. Sickles, though, didn't get permission. He was one of this is a situation where he's like, I'm going to, ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And he moves the men out there. And if you've ever reenacted and have done anything on a large scale, you know that it takes time. It takes time. And he starts this at about noon and, move out there. By the time that this makes its way all the way up to George Meade, to get everybody in place and Meade rides out there, it's too late. Spoiler alert. Here's the other thing about Dan Sickles. Dan Sickles did not go out there and reconnoiter the ground properly. So by the time he gets out there, he is out in front of the line. I've got another map, kind of skipping ahead. But you see what happens now that Sickles has moved up. So he creates a salient or an inverted V. So you see where it says the peach orchard, about the middle of the screen. That's where Sickles' core is. You see that it is not touching the rest of the fish hook. He's supposed to be there on the dotted line where it says Sickles, and that's where he started off at, but he moved forward. And of course, this is going to cause problems for the federal command and the federal commander. So Sickles moves out there. Meade rides out there and he's like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, well, if it's such a big issue, and Meade says, you idiot, this hill serves us no good holding it because the Confederates are beneath you, because it's the apex. The Confederates are beneath you on this end, and they're beneath us and we're beneath the hill on this end. It's a high point, yeah, but our artillery commands this position better than theirs does. So if they were to move up here, our artillery on this ridge would have beaten their artillery out. See what I'm saying, Moose? So now it's, you know, you've screwed up, and I wish I could undo this, but I can't. But because he moves out there without reconnoitering the ground, his corps is not long enough to cover the entire area to even try to tie in with the rest of the line. And if you go to Gettysburg to this day and you look there at the peach orchard, you see something that a lot of people miss that is very poignant. And that's the fact that in between the regimental markers, there's artillery pieces. Now, what does that signify? What it signifies is that his line is so thin that his regiments are so broken out. His brigades are so broken out. They're having to pull the artillery reserve and move it up there to plug the gap. Now, if you know anything about War Between the States combat, your artillery is, you know, it opens the battle and it shoots over the heads of troops. It's not supposed to be in line with you. So that's, you know, they're trying to make the best out of a bad situation. So that's where the Federals are. Again, we're going to put a pin in that story really quickly. So going back to Longstreet's command, Longstreet is ordered about 12 to move out, and he starts moving his corps out at about 12 o'clock. And again, because Stuart wasn't there, or because the ground wasn't properly reconnoitered, you see the big red dot in the middle of the screen, Harrison? All right, can you see?
Yes.
Can you see the arrows that go with it?
Yes.
Okay, so that is pretty close to the start of Longstreet's camp and line of march. So Longstreet and his men start marching out in this 90-degree heat. They start going down the Cashtown Road. They hook a left. They begin coming up Hare's Ridge. They come to Black Horse Tavern, and around Black Horse Tavern, you know, Longstreet's about there. McLaws rides up to Longstreet and he says, "Hey, we got a problem. If we continue on this way up this hill has no cover. There's a Federal signal corps station on top of this other hill. I can see them. That means they can see us. If we're to attack on a surprise, there's no way that we can do that without, you know, giving up the surprise." So Longstreet does something very controversial that that confuses a lot of historians, confuses men, really set everything back. It was estimated that the march should have taken an hour to an hour and a half. But remember, they started at between 12 and 1. Some people say closer to 1, though. So if you see there where the line kind of stops and then turns around, Longstreet orders a counter march, meaning he turns his men around and they start chewing pretty much the same ground that they just covered. So they march around, they march back. Instead of getting back on the Cashtown Road, they march, they turn, they cross Willoughby Run, they go behind Seminary Ridge, and then they line up in the wood line in what would be the assault for the onto the peach orchard. Now, again, going back to, as a reminder, what was Robert E. Lee's orders for that day? You remember that, Harrison? You're paying attention?
No, I do not.
They were to go out and they were to wheel left. The corps of Longstreet's corps was to go out, do a left wheel, use the Emmitsburg Road as their guide, and flank the Federals. Mm-hmm. When Lee came up with that plan, Dan Sickles wasn't where Dan Sickles was supposed to be, and he sure wasn't where he ended up at. So, you know, there's an old axiom that the first, even the best plans turn to crap after the first shot's fired, and hey, you know, this is what's happened. So it's decided that they're going to make the best out of a bad situation. And we'll get into that in a second. Really quickly, to put a pin in it right here where we are on the story, let's talk about let's talk about the regiments under Barksdale. Let's talk about some of their numbers and some of their commanders. So Barksdale's brigade as of July 2nd, 1863, and this is actually, I've done it in their line of march as well, or not line of march, but in their battle line. So going from left to right, you have the 18th Mississippi Infantry, commanded by Colonel Thomas M. Griffin. They have 242 men ready, and men and officers ready to go into battle. You have the 13th Mississippi Infantry. If I say a regiment that's important to you, Moose, go ahead and say something.
Oh no, you keep going. I was taking a picture, so I remember this time.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, wasn't the Wayne Rifles? Weren't they part of the one of these that I'm mentioning?
I think they were in the 18th.
I believe that's correct. 18th or 13th. I know they were part of the brigade.
Yeah,
but again, 13th Mississippi Infantry, Colonel James W. Carter, brigade had 481 men. Then you have the 17th Mississippi Infantry, Colonel W.D. Holder, 649 men, and then bringing up the extreme right flank was the 21st Mississippi Infantry, commanded by Colonel Benjamin Grubbs Humphreys, 424 men. So Barksdale gets, and the Mississippians get finally to their staging point. And it goes as far as McLaw's, it's of course Anderson, McLaw's, Hood going as far as divisions go. On Barksdale's right flank, he's got Kershaw's South Carolinians. On his left flank, he's got Wilcox's Alabamians, and down from him, Lang's Floridians. So again, good representation of the South, in line, ready to go. Wilcox and Lang's are actually out of Anderson's division, I believe. So they're chilling out. Well, Longstreet doesn't have time to either. He doesn't have time, or he just makes the call. There's a lot of debate. Moxley Sorrell, who was one of Longstreet's aides during the war, said that Longstreet's heart was not in this attack. He didn't feel up to it. There's a lot of discussion about whether Longstreet was into it, whether he wasn't into it, whether he was following the spirit of the letter, whether he was just following the actual letter to the spirit of the order, or the letter of the order. A lot of debate on that. I do know that at one point, Longstreet is leading from the front, even commanding a brigade. I'm admittedly not the biggest Longstreet fan because of what happens post-war. But it is what it is. But Longstreet is corps command. He's boots on the ground at this time. He has to make the best decision. So he decides that the best for his corps to be able to carry this, to be able to win, is an echelon attack. No longer doing this, instead of scooting more down and swinging out like he's supposed to, or like he was originally ordered, or interpreting the order that way, he decides to send his corps up in echelon. What does in echelon mean? So in echelon, this is the best representation I could draw up of it. It's kind of like a rolling domino effect. So going from right to left, which is kind of what happened, the first brigade steps off and moves forward. As they get so far forward, the next brigade steps off and moves forward, and they're staggered behind them. So then again, continuing on, the next one would have stepped off, and then the next one would have stepped off. And you see the one without the arrow, that's the one still in the line of battle. In the original line. So it's again, think of it coming in as a wave, think of it coming in as dominoes, dominoes falling. It's like that. The idea behind an echelon attack is, all right, I'm moving up here to attack Harrison. You send somebody out there, we begin shooting at each other. Then suddenly, boom, I've got somebody beside me and we're able to flank. So continuing on, and it spreads out the Federal line more and more, because then you're having to plug gaps, plug holes. Barksdale is, at this point, he is biting at the bit to go in. Barksdale is it was written. His corps commander, or not his corps, his division commander, Lafayette McLaws, in 1878, said this about Barksdale. Barksdale had been exceedingly impatient for the order to advance, and his enthusiasm was shared by his command. Barksdale was standing in front, ready to give the word and to lead. He was not far from me, and so soon it was signified to me, I sent my aide de camp, Captain G.B. Lamar, to carry the order to Barksdale, and the results I expressed in Captain Lamar's words. I had witnessed many charges marked in every way by influencing gallantry. Indeed, I had the honor of participating when in the first line of the Georgia regulars, but I never saw anything equal to the dash and heroism of the Mississippians. If you remembered how anxious Barksdale was to attack the enemy, and his eagerness was participated in by all of his officers and men, and when I carried him the order to advance, his face was radiant with joy. He was in front of his brigade, hat off, his long white hair reminded me of the white plume of Navarre. I saw him as far as the eye would follow, till still ahead of his men, leading them on. The result, you remember the picket fence in front of the brigade. I was anxious to see how they would get over and around it. When they reached it, the fence disappeared as if by magic. The slaughter on the other side was terrible. Barksdale gallantly leading his men in a terrific fight. I'm going to pause right there, stick a pin in that quote. But again, Barksdale, according to the source, the primary source who was there after the war, he is chomping at the bits. In fact, he is so chomping at the bits. There are recorded in Lafayette McLaws's records that Barksdale first, as he's seeing the other ones go off in echelon, the other brigades go off, he rides up to McLaws and he says to McLaws, "Hey, when can I go in?" McLaws says, "Give it a minute. You'll go in time." He sees Longstreet. He turns his charger, his horse, charges over to Longstreet and asks Longstreet, "When can I go in?" So jumping his chain of command, he's that eager to go in. And finally, I love this write-up that I found on it. Barksdale, when he's given the order to, well, I'm going to backtrack. For where I found this, the author said that he was like a pit bull straining at the leash, and he implored Longstreet to allow his men to go in, claiming that, "I wish you would let me go in, General. I will take that battery in 5 minutes." Again, talking about the Federal artillery that's filling the gaps of Sickles' corps. Longstreet replied, "Wait a little while. We are all going in presently." Barksdale rides back to his brigade, calls together his regimental commanders. He told his officers that they would go in on foot and that he and his command staff would be the only ones on horseback. And he told them, "The line before you must be broken. To do so, let every officer and man animate his comrades by his personal presence in the front line." All the Mississippi Brigade stood some 600 yards to the west of the Federal salient. Again, salient being that inverted V that Dane Sickles made in the peach orchard. Finally, when he gets near 6 p.m., Longstreet takes Barksdale off the leash. And Barksdale he's riding in front of his men, and some say he even stopped in front of his old regiment. And he rode out in front of his men and pulled his sword, and he said, "Attention, Mississippians, battalions forward." And with that, one veteran recounted that 1,400 rifles were grasped with firm hands as the line officers repeated the command, "Forward, march," and the men sprang forward, and 1,400 voices began raising the rebel yell. And I just got goosebumps. Again, another account was Barksdale gave the word forward and, waving his hat, led the line forward himself, and we all followed him. "Proudly," wrote one Mississippian. "Dressed to the colors and forward to the foe," were the orders. When a solid shot tore a gap in our ranks, it was instantly closed up, and the brigade came on in almost a perfect line. Again, Barksdale still mounted on the top of his horse, continuing to go. The Southerners rushed behind their leader, yelling at the top of their voices without firing a shot, and the brigade sped swiftly across the open field and literally rushed the goal. The Mississippians engulfed the apex of Sickles' line. Now, I'm going to pause for a second. The Mississippians are going in. This is what we've been waiting for. One Federal wrote that about the Mississippians, yelling like demons, black with smoke, and lusting for hand-to-hand conflict. The enveloping mass of Confederates rushed the enclosures and speedily gained possession of them, and a great gap was opened in our line. Now I'm gonna backtrack for a second about Barksdale before that scene of martial beauty that I can see it in my mind, and it would make a great movie. Behind Barksdale's brigade was another brigade, a brigade of Georgians. And one of the Georgians, his name was E.H. Sutton. Sutton was a private in Company K of the 24th Georgia. And Sutton had this to write after the war. When I reached the edge of the woods, Barksdale's men had formed line in the edge of the field preparing to charge. General Barksdale came back near to where I stood, hidden by the undergrowth, and stepping behind a large white oak tree, uncovered his head, and with his right hand and face lifted up, began his silent prayer. I could see his lips moving, but heard no sound. Before his devotions were ended, a courier came with the order. One of his aides touched him and gave him the message. He replaced his cap and rapidly walked to his horse mounted and gave the order to charge forward at the double quick. So where are we now in things? Barksdale's moving forward. Barksdale's prayed. His men are moving forward. It's about 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. 5:30. Let's say 5:30 because the map says 5:30. The men are moving forward. As you can tell, there's a skirmish line out in the front made up of the 63rd Pennsylvania, the 5th New Jersey, and the 1st United States Sharpshooters. Hooker's been sent out west by this point. Dan Sickles' men, his corps, is set up, kind of trying to form the best that they can using the woods. On the right, Hood's Texans are fighting and the Texans and Alabamians, they're fighting Little Round Top. They're fighting at Devil's Den. That's going on. Kershaw's men, the South Carolinians, they have advanced. In fact, Kershaw, he steps off. He pushes the skirmishers back. His brigade does a left wheel. And you can kind of see it where the lines for Kershaw's brigade move forward. They form a left wheel facing the Wheatfield Road. And while there, the 2nd New Hampshire fixes bayonets, and they begin to charge at Kershaw's men. And Kershaw's men, who've been taking fire coming across the field, who've been taking fire from the 2nd New Hampshire and the 3rd Maine, they fall back. They reform. The 2nd New Hampshire, though, they continue to push forward, and a gap is opened in the Federal line. So you've got Confederates firing on their flanks, and then suddenly out of this wood line comes these screaming Confederates, and they're beginning to push forward. And the Federals like, what in the heck are we going to do? The 114th Pennsylvania, 57th Pennsylvania, 105th Pennsylvania, they actually say, well, we can't hold here, so they push forward. They go across the Emmitsburg Road, and they try to confront Barksdale's. But here's the thing. They create a larger gap in the flank between the 2nd New Hampshire, who's coming down towards Moose. Pull down the map really quickly. Nope. All right. So it's kind of like this. I think my camera has inverted it. Yeah, there we go. So they're at an angle like this. The 2nd New Hampshire goes down towards Kershaw's. The 114th, 157, or 114th, 57th, and 105th, they advance across. So there's a huge gap. Big enough for my head to come in. Bring the map back up, please, Moose. So because that large gap is forced, they're trying to figure out what in the world are we going to do. So they began pulling regiments from the reserve and trying to plug the gap. So the 68th Pennsylvania moves forward and kind of plugs the gap for a second. But here's the thing. Kershaw's men, they rally, they hit. The Mississippians, they hit, and the Federal line begins to crumble. And by this time, at the same time, Wilcox's Alabamians and Lang's Floridians, they begin to engage and begin to help push the on Barksdale's left, and they begin to push the Federals, and they continue to break. They are breaking crazy. This is a map roughly that somebody on one of the chat forums did. You can see from the start how the Federal line is going down the Emmitsburg Road and turning onto the Wheatfield Road. This is again 5:30 p.m. The next thing that they know, this is at 6:50. So they have, and you can kind of see there by Trossel Lane, past the Wheatfield Road, there's Barksdale's Mississippians. The 21st Mississippi, you can see they're on the Wheatfield Road and they're pushing artillery back, but the rest of Barksdale's brigade has moved forward. We've broken the Federal lines. They are running. They are routing. They're kicking butt and taking name. It's to the point where E.P. Alexander, the chief of artillery for the 2nd Corps, comes up, and he begins unlimbering his guns. And I have a quote in here from a Federal. Again, their words: the rebels gained the Emmitsburg Road and on our left, driving our left back, bringing up a battery of 12 pounders, planting it in the middle of the road, opened up with double grapes, a double canister. I saw that it would not be wise for us to remain and told the men to retreat slowly, load and fire. Keep in the field until reaching the small frame dwelling. It was a shoemaker shop or a blacksmith shop. As we crossed the roads, we ran into a colonel who was sitting on the back doorstep. I said to him, "Are you wounded?" He said, "No, I'm not, but I'm very weak." Alexander later wrote and said that when they got into position, hey, I thought that the war was over. I thought that Robert E. Lee had done it again. We've broken them. Because again, I'm going to go back to this map. Not this map, excuse me. Let me find the map I want to go back to that shows Dan Sickles. All right. Again, look behind Dan Sickles. Look behind Dan Sickles. So Sykes has taken, the round tops. Sickles's men are broken. The Federal line has a hole in it. It has a hole in it. The Federal line is broken. They just need to continue to push, and the war will be over. They've broken the Federal lines. Alexander said that it was such a target-heavy environment that every shot that he sent out was well received, well hit. So continuing on, again, this is about 6 to 7 p.m., so it's right after this map. But again, the Federals are falling back. Wright's moving up, Lang's moving up, Wilcox is moving up. Barksdale has, again, he's starting to do what he was ordered to do. He is doing that left wheel and pushing. The Federals are freaking out. What in the world are we going to do? There are pockets of Federals who are stopping and firing, reloading, firing. Barksdale's men are tired at this point. You think about it, they were supposed to go into battle. They were supposed to march. They left between 12 and 1. It was supposed to take an hour and a half. They didn't step off until about 5 o'clock. And for most of that time, they were marching and counter-marching in that July heat. The men are worn out, but they're still going on. They're having a rolling fight. I mean, they're doing the best they can, but they're running out of ammunition. So again, Wilcox's Alabamians, Lang's Florida's brigade, they begin engaging. They begin to push, and the Federals continue to break. And finally, pretty much the Federal Third Corps is shattered, and it's left up to Winfield Hancock, who's holding Cemetery Ridge, to start figuring out what to do. So he begins pulling his reserve and frantically plugs the gap as best as he can. The brigades continue to push forward. In the meantime, there's something that you may have noticed on the map. The 21st Mississippi kind of, scuttled off. They were chasing artillery, and that's not in a bad way. They did not want the artillery remaining unchecked and in their rear. So they were pushing the guns off. They actually captured the Federal guns that they were pushing, and to the point where when Hancock sees that is gone, he sends a brigade from the copse of trees all the way down there to the edge of the wheat field to try to stop the 21st Mississippi. But the brigades push forward again. Now, in the meantime, Wilcox, who is from a completely different corps, completely different division, same army, he's beginning to take heavy casualties, and he sends requests back to his commander. And I need support. Nothing can be sent, or nothing is sent. And finally, after fresh Federal troops and fresh Federal artillery are just tearing into his men, his men break. And there's suddenly a gap between Lang and Barksdale. And Lang sees that, and Lang begins to fall back. And Barksdale's Mississippians, they're tired. The Federals that come up actually look at the men, and because they're wearing English import clothing, they think, or I assume English import clothing. Barksdale was said that he was wearing a bluish gray suit. So it very well could be that they were wearing some type of English import cloth. Didn't really, search the uniform end of it that much on the individual men, but they thought that they were Federals. They thought the Mississippians were Federals, so they didn't shoot at them. Barksdale's men take advantage of it and pump 2 volleys into them before they realize what's going on. But Barksdale's men, they're running out of steam. They need support. Their support's crumbling, but they're determined. They're stubborn. They can taste the victory. They can taste it. But here's the thing. Go back to Barksdale's quote to his order to his officers. He's ordered his officers to move forward with the men. There's one quote I forgot to bring up earlier, but it works now. This is an account from Judge J.B. Booth, a survivor of Company F, 21st Regiment. He's quoted, "I vividly remember the effects of the first shot that came from the battery in our front that called General Barksdale's request to Longstreet to allow his to move forward. J.T. Worley was killed. Captain H.H. Simmons, John H. Thompson, J.T. Neely, each lost a leg but survived the war. John T. Neely died a few days ago in his home in Charleston. By the same shot, there were casualties I do not remember. Captain Stamps was killed in 3 feet, and soon after the brigade went forward." That's just 2 officers right there mentioned that were killed. Company commander, great officers. But all these regiments are their colonels, their lieutenant colonels, their majors, other lieutenants. Several regiments have upwards of 7 officers, suddenly, getting hit and going down. So the Mississippians they're tired. They're running out of ammunition. Their support is going. Their officers are going. It's a do or die moment. And there's an account from one of Longstreet's aides that Longstreet is over at the peach orchard, and he sees the Mississippians stalled, and he rides up he asked Longstreet, do you want Barksdale to stall? And he said, no, Barksdale needs to keep pushing. Barksdale this entire time has been leading from the front. He's missing a foot. Oh, I forgot to mention that. Barksdale has taken a cannonball to the foot, and it's taken most of it off. Probably a piece of grape shot, or a canister, if we're to be honest. He's also been shot in the thigh. He's losing blood. But he's still on horseback. And the aide, but the entire time, the only order that his men continued to hear him say was forward, men, push it, men, push, go, forward, forward. Egging his men on, pushing his men on, just trying the best that he can. The aide rides up to Barksdale and he says, General, you have to keep moving. Barksdale rides out in front of his men. And he's saying, come on, men, we've got to keep going. Follow me. A company of the 111th New York is ordered, their commander, shoot that rebel officer. And that company fires. And while Barksdale is riding like this, turned at the profile, or not the profile, but his back to the enemy, egging his men forward, trying to get them to move forward, a bullet hits him. And he tumbles from the saddle. One of the men who was with him wrote this after the war, or not after the war, during the war, a couple months later. Mr. Editor, the following circumstances attending the fall of General William Barksdale at the Battle of Gettysburg, related by his adjutant, Captain John A. Barksdale, will be of interest to his friends. General Barksdale was struck twice, first in the shoulder and afterwards in the chest. Again, that's another wounding. When his last wound, he said to Boyd, a courier, "I'm killed. Tell my wife and children that I died fighting at my post." Just at this time, Boyd was wounded in the leg, which made it impossible for him to render General Barksdale any assistance. He therefore left him, the enemy not being more than 20 yards distance. The cause of not being with him at the time he was shot is at about 50 yards from where he was struck. My horse was killed under me. I was with him at the end and remarked to him, and it kind of cuts off there, that I was on foot. He told me to go back to the battery about 250 yards and order it to the front. I did this and returned as rapidly as possible. Within 40 yards of the brigade, I saw Barksdale's horse galloping over the field without a rider, and the men falling back while the enemy was advancing. To go to him was impossible. So again, Barksdale goes down. And his men, the momentum is just like letting a balloon out of the air out of a balloon. He's left for dead. His men assume that, they see his front explode, but that bullet come out. And that's just the drop too many, the straw that broke the camel's back, the final crack in the levee, whatever you want to call it. And the men fall back. Now, if you remember at the beginning, we talked about or about middle of the show, we talked about the regiments. This is their casualty statistics. The brigade suffered 46% casualties. Of the 242 men of the 18th Mississippi, 18 were killed, 82 were wounded. From the 13th, 481 men, 28 were killed, 137 were wounded. Of the 17th Mississippi, 469 men went into battle, 40 were killed, 160 were wounded. Of the 21st Mississippi, 424 men, 18 were killed, 85 were wounded. Again, several officers of the brigade, colonels, majors, the brigade leader, were eventually either died there on the field or succumbed to wounds days later. Barksdale, though, his men go back. They remain in place, and are held in reserve because almost 50% casualties. They're not going to be used the next day. Barksdale was found on the field west of the Humbleball Farm by James G. Cooper of Company K, 1st Massachusetts Regiment. He was taken by those men to the 2nd Corps Hospital. Barksdale had first hailed a lieutenant. Now, here's the thing about Barksdale. Barksdale was a Mason. Barksdale had kind of like, they were studs almost, or kind of like cufflink buttons, mother of pearl that I've read with the square and compass on it. So it's very possible that he gave the Masonic hailing sign at this point. We don't know. But still enough that a Federal came over there and took him to the rear, even though he did not know his rank, even though he was wounded in the thigh and the leg and in the chest. And the regimental surgeon, said that the wound was so severe in his chest, when he was breathing, they could hear, you've heard of a sucking chest wound, they could hear the air sucking in as well. He appeared to be in great agony, but this is what I love about Barksdale, he was still abusive to the men who carried him. So even though he's dying, he's still, he's still, you know, giving hell to the Yanks. Anyway, they carried him back to the hospital. There was a young man of his brigade who lay wounded on the ground. And when he saw Barksdale, and this is how much love he had for him, he refused to be helped, saying that my commander needs it more than I do. You know, so yeah. Barksdale eventually passes in the early morning of July 2nd. And one federal on July 6th wrote, the following particulars of the death of the noted rebel General William Barksdale have just been communicated to me. Lieutenant Colonel Charles E. Livingston of New York and AJG on General, I guess that's Adjutant General or Judge Advocate General, I don't know, on a double-day staff on the night of Thursday, July 3rd, went out in extreme front. And of course, this should have been the second, but this is, you know, confusing. But they found him. There was a spot about a quarter of a mile advance of our pickets with a small party of stretcher bearers. Was once driven in by rebel scouts, but on second attempt was fortunate to succeed. The body of the general was found, life not yet extinct, but his wounds was a mortal one. He was lifted upon the stretcher, being very heavy person. 8 men were required to bear his weight. He declared with his last breath that he was proud of the cause that he died for, and in the manner in which he had received his death wound, that the Confederacy was invincible, and that although repulsed that day, he was sure of victory on the morrow. He was left with Colonel Livingston, his watch, his pocketbook, and other trinkets to be sent to his, it says his friends, but it was to his wife. He continues to say that Barksdale was known as one of the extremely bitter secessionists who indulged in many repeated threats previous to the war in the dissolution of the Union. The watch is a gold one, elaborately chased. There are several articles of jewelry in addition to it. Gettysburg National Military Park actually has one of his buttons, and I really want to see that button. There was another, I can't find it right now. There was another actual quote where he talks about, you know, he lamented for his wife, leaving her a widow. He lamented for his sons, leaving them fatherless, thinking about them, everything like that. This is a picture of the Humbleball Farm in Gettysburg. This is where Barksdale was carried. Barksdale was actually buried in the yard. And again, the thing that, you know, A, shows that the Federals had some respect for him, but also that he may have used that Masonic hailing sign, was the fact that Barksdale, the next morning after he died and after they buried him, and there are some accounts, I don't know how true they are, of him receiving Masonic rites when they initially interred him into the dirt. He had a well-carved headstone on July 4th. By July 4th, it said, you know, Brigadier General William Barksdale, former United States representative from Mississippi, CSA, died July 3rd, 1863. And he also had a wooden footstone. So that's pretty cool. Looking at some of the historical stuff, this is, see the red dot there, Moose?
Yes.
That is where most people believe that Barksdale was actually shot, wounded, and captured at. Aerial view. You can kind of see over here a red X. You can see the Humbleball Farm out there in the back, where Barksdale was believed to been captured at. Barksdale, of course, as we've mentioned, passes away. But a year later, Barksdale is actually disinterred. Not 1 year later, 1866, 1867, 67, excuse me. He is disinterred from Gettysburg. He is moved to Jackson, Mississippi, where he gets the largest funeral that the city has ever seen. In fact, one newspaper account in Jackson Clarion Ledger says the remains of the noble and lamented son of Mississippi arrived here yesterday at 1 o'clock and will this evening be conveyed to their last resting place in the bosom of the state he so loved and so well, and among the people that will ever respect and revere his memory. The body was brought here by Lieutenant Harris Barksdale, a nephew of the deceased, from Washington, where it had been embalmed. It was met at the depot by a committee of citizens, conducted to the Capitol, the old Capitol, where it lays in state, to the hour appointed for the funeral. That continues on that the funeral of William Barksdale will take place at 3 o'clock this evening from the Capitol Rotunda, where his body and elaborate mounted coffin is now laying in state. Religious services will be performed by the Reverend Mr. Crane. The procession under Colonel George L. Donald, Marshal Major A.J. Harrod, Assistant Marshal, will be formed following order. The body, the relatives of the deceased, the state authorities, the judge of the high court, city authorities, survivors of the brigade, the Masonic fraternity, and citizens. The procession will proceed down Capitol to West Street and thence to the grave. Colonel W.H. Walter has been invited and will officiate as master of Masonic ceremonies. The fraternity are requested to meet at their hall punctually at 2 o'clock. The following pallbearers have been appointed by the Marshal: General Winfield Scott Featherton, Locke E. Houston. I've never heard of him. Need to do some research into him. General J.Z. George, Lieutenant Jason B. Clark, Lieutenant G.S. Covert, and Marion Smith. A like number will be appointed by the Masonic fraternity. Colonel W.H. Walter headed the Masonic contingent that took part in the funeral ceremony, and this was his epitaph for Barksdale. When the hour of peril came to the south, he sought the post of danger, in the halo of heroism illuminated by the chaplet of the statesman. At the head of his noble Mississippians, he led the van on the ensanguined field, and whenever blow fell, blows fell fastest and blood flowed freest, his manly form was seen, and his clarion voice was heard. In the frightful carnival of death at Gettysburg, he yielded to that conqueror whose command is law, and his gallant spirit went home. I love me some Barksdale. I love me some Barksdale just because, it's that story. I'm gonna finish this before going into the 21 comments I haven't read. Barksdale has 3 tombstones. So in doing research, I found out that Barksdale's younger brother, who was a Confederate congressman named Ethelbert, and Barksdale's widow did not get along after the war. After the war, Mrs. Barksdale, widow Barksdale, was left destitute. Older brother or younger brother brought Barksdale home, but it was her responsibility to get the tombstone. Well, she couldn't afford it. He was buried in the family plot in Greenwood Cemetery here in Jackson. It wasn't until about 2021 that the picture on the left was placed over his actual final resting place. Now, also in Greenwood Cemetery, there in the Confederate section, there is a VA marker to Barksdale. He's not there. But then in his hometown of Columbus, Mississippi, he has a memorial or cenotaph stone in the Confederate section there. So yeah, that he has 3 headstones, 1 real one and 2 cenotaphs. But still, his wife also got one as a cenotaph about the same time. But that's Barksdale and his Mississippians. For so much of history, modern historia, the Pickett's charge takes place in the mind. You hear Gettysburg, you think Pickett. Nobody pays attention the first day. Nobody pays attention to Reynolds getting shot and all that other stuff. The second day, Little Round Top, because of Jeff Shara, gets all the credit and glory, and Joshua Chamberlain and all that stuff. Of course, Pickett's charge gets the glory for day 3. But if you want to talk about a point of almost victory there at Gettysburg, it's Barksdale's Mississippians. And like the title of this program said, what one Federal said about the men, it was the grandest charge that was ever made by mortal men. So scrolling through the comments. All right, how much stuff did I get wrong? Patreon is you put your eye out. Pictures of Barksdale's men. Yeah. Early memoirs vindicate Barksdale and his men. It was a captain with the authorization allowed. I've read a captain and a colonel that allowed the flag of truce with the Yankees, Second Fredericksburg. And while those Yankees were going up there, they looked around and saw a weak point and then ordered a bayonet charge to the weak point. Yeah. Dr. Mitchum, I am not a writer. I am at best a blog post. I'm a storyteller. I like doing research. I like telling the story. I love Barksdale just because, a Mississippian. My ancestor Gettysburg was part of Hill's Corps. Didn't get to take part in this, but it's such a. I mean, the momentum. You can feel the drive. You can feel everything. And then that one regiment that Hancock is able to pull, or not regiment, but one brigade. I think it was even the Excelsior Brigade, but it's a bunch of New Yorkers that he was able to pull from the center of the line that were in reserve and just plug them at that moment. And the fact that it took a whole company of Yankees to take him down is just, yeah. Yeah, it was from Hazel Grove. Thank you. Oh, well, thank you, David. I appreciate that. I tried to pull up, hey, now Jeremiah Gage, we need to do a program on him with you on this show, Stark. Jeremiah Gage and the 11th Mississippi. That's another great story. Of course, the 11th, Company A taking 100% casualties there. Yeah.
I'm going to corner you up, Mr. Stark, and we're going to get this episode planned along with some other things, hopefully.
Just continuing on. Yeah, well, I'll continue to tell the story. All right. So Cindy Preya says, are there any recommendations on Barksdale books wise? There are a couple of them out there that I found just doing research. I haven't read them, so I cannot recommend them. But that's why I was trying to go through as much firsthand.
Because I have been interested with Barksdale for quite a while. I just haven't stopped to read the books yet. But I actually had a couple recommendations from my father, so I'm hoping they're good. I'm hoping I can trust my father.
I know there's one that deals with the specific second day, but there's Barksdale's Charge. I've read some mixed reviews on it on one of the chat forums. But it's I like trying to find those firsthand sources. I liked finding those newspaper accounts, those quotes from the Confederates. That one quote from that Georgian about him going and praying. It really takes a man who, it really makes me feel like I know I'm reading what's there. Yeah. Yep. So that's Barksdale. Good God. I went over. You should have told me that I went over, Moose.
You only went over about 36 minutes.
Well, I mean, it sounded like everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, when you told me that we were doing the episode, and I was like, you know what, I'm definitely not an expert on Gettysburg or Barksdale Charge. Sadly, I just started really learning about Barksdale, just some things here and there. And I was like, I sit back and enjoying tonight. And as I'm hearing this, all I can think of is, this is, and it's nowhere near the great state of Mississippi, but I honestly believe it's one of our greatest hours as a state, where our people went and defended us, and a great son of Mississippian gave his life for our state.
Yeah, and there will be somebody out there who's going to say, well, you said he was born in Smyrna, Tennessee. he's not from it. Yeah, he was a congressman from Mississippi, and he moved to Mississippi just as soon as he could. We claim him as one of our sons. Get over it. Really quickly, I'm going to try to share an image. So share screen. Share. So this is a Google map. We're about to get ran over. Google map image from pretty much where the Mississippians stepped off, looking towards the peach orchard. And you can kind of see the ground that they had to cover. From the wood line that's behind us that we talked about, and really I could see Barksdale like almost right here, kneeling, praying, and then moving, having to move forward and going up that slight rise. And that's one thing I love about reenacting is you and Jason, I hope that you'll agree to the sentiment. You can read these stories about these men and what they went through, but and looking at it, you don't think that rise is that bad. But until you've been out there, which I've never done Gettysburg, but I did Chickamauga this past September, and looking at the hill we had to march up to get to the battlefield, you wouldn't think it was that bad, but it kicked a lot of our butts. But in that full wool, and I was an officer, so I'm just carrying a saber. I can't imagine having a full 40-round cartridge box with a rifle, going up that way. Yes, Tony, you mentioned him. Thank you. That's what inspired me. Ranger Matt. I was messaging Jason a couple nights ago. He was doing an event or living history out at Spangler Springs, I think. And Matt was doing the talk there. And I'm like, oh, you got to hear Ranger Matt in person. I would love to get Matt is from Houston. Matt is from Houston, Mississippi, but he works at Gettysburg and is a huge Robert E. Lee fan. And he does a good job telling our side as best as he can with the National Park Service. Would love to know if he's a member, and if not, I will be happy to sponsor his membership. But it's something else. He inspired me with that video. The first video that he did on the actual Gettysburg National Military Park page is what got me into trying to study more about Barksdale, and watching the video a couple weeks or last week or last weekend when it came out. I was like, this would be a good topic to cover. And I was like, Moose, we're either going to do Barksdale or we're going to review the veteran that just came out. Take your pick. And he said, well, haven't got my veteran yet. So
here we go.
Hey, guess what we're doing next week? We're reviewing Frank's article on Southern literature.
Ooh, I hope I get my veteran.
Me too.
We make jokes, but know that that's out of national hand, everybody, because we get the comments too. No, we can't help it.
Yeah. So if there's it's Alexander. It's not on mine. I don't feel like driving 9 hours or 13, 14, 15, 20 hours, however far away Gettysburg is from my house to go up there and lose. It is what, if I lived closer to it, maybe. There's a lot in the Western theater that is so underdone that needs to be done.
Yeah.
That until we get the Western theater the same line, which of course, again, the Western theater has its great stories. It has its stories of Todd Carter at Franklin, follow me, boys. Home is just yonder. I'm going home. And then, getting mortally wounded with his, head shot and being able to die in his own bed, or Patrick Claiborne again at Franklin, or the five other generals that were killed at Franklin. That's great. The Atlanta campaign, the Carolinas, there at the end of the war, and Bentonville. I was thinking about doing that event next year, but I'm not. But reading about the last grand charge of the Army of Tennessee and stuff like that, is until the Western Theater needs some big events to shed light on it. And that's kind of my
I'll agree with that. I will say I do want to do Gettysburg once, but I also want to be in shape because that will be a hard day with how I am right now.
Now touring the battlefield, would not mind touring the battlefield.
It's great. I've enjoyed it.
But going up there and reenacting, again, honestly would love to do an accurate Cold Harbor, with the trenches and the Yankees charging at us and getting mowed down. Would love to do Cold Harbor. Wouldn't mind doing Sailor's Creek, the last great battle of the Army of Northern Virginia, especially the Naval Marine Brigade. Wouldn't mind doing 1st Manassas. Wouldn't mind doing 2nd Manassas. Would prefer to do 2nd Manassas over 1st Manassas. Because when 1st Manassas was, Harrison? It was in July. Uniforms are better. But wouldn't mind doing that. But there's a lot more in the Western Theater I'd love to do.
Mr. Stark mentions it, and I mainly because shockingly I haven't heard about it. I think there's one in Shiloh, but Shiloh is probably at the top of my list.
They did one 2 years ago, and I hate I couldn't make it. Then they did one 5 years before that, and then they did one 5 years before that. So the 150th I did, and fun fact for you. So the shirt that I was wearing at Division Reunion to Command the Color Guardian, my battle shirt, that was made off of an original pattern by a woman who had an 1840 Singer sewing machine. So I was able to wear that shirt to Shiloh, and y'all know the story of my 4th great grandfather, Nathan W. Slay. If you don't, you're going to hear it. Captain Slay, or at that time Sergeant Slay, 6th Mississippi Infantry, going to meet the Yankees right back here on my shelf. Shout out to Grady Howe. They progress along, they attack. Nathan gets hit in the face. Nathan goes down. Nathan's brother, who's a musician, I would love to be able to prove it, but there's no way to prove it. But of course, musicians were used as stretcher bearers. So very likely that his own brother is the one that carried him back to the field hospital. So anyway, Nathan.
Shiloh, but I would have to be like, okay, well, since Shiloh doesn't happen a lot, I would also need a lot of money, be in shape when it's about to happen, so I can get as historically accurate as I could be for Shiloh. So Shiloh is going to be a timing thing for me. Yeah.
Well, it's April too. That's hard. Yeah. But anyway, so we go and do the morning tactical that Friday morning, and like I said, Nathan, I was taken out. So we're doing the morning tactical, and I've shot all my ammunition out of the top of my cartridge box. I'm still in the enlisted men at this point. And so what I'm doing, instead of falling back, I just go ahead and take a hit. I'm going to let the line progress, open my arsenal packs, put my ammo, move on with life. So when I go down, I hit up a clot of dirt, and that clot of dirt hits me right in my right eye. So I'm laying there trying to get this dirt out of my eye, my right eye. Like, I can't see out of it. It's burning. It's hurting. And then it dawns on me. I'm here at Shiloh, just right outside the park limits, about maybe 2 miles from where my ancestor was shot in the face and lost his right eye. And I'm sitting here 150 years later, and my eye is stinging and everything. I know it doesn't fully compare to the fact of bullet, eye gone. But still, the fact that I'm sitting here cupping my eye, rubbing my eye, trying to get this stuff out. I got goosebumps right then and there. Then I realized I was an ants and got up and
Get shot in the eye. Just like, oh crap.
Yeah. Nathan didn't have the ants. Nathan did not have. At least we can't find that.
Could you imagine how bad that would suck? You get shot, you fall over.
Fire ants didn't come up until much later. Like the middle of the 1900s, I think, here in Mississippi.
But still, could you imagine? Like you get shot, you fall in fire ants.
Yeah. You take a hit and then land in fire ants. It's happened. You land in fire ants, and hey.
I wish I could have been there for that.
Oh, I was cussing up a blue storm.
I would have enjoyed it.
Get the ants off of me, transfer my rounds up, and then, fall back in line and Yankees retreat. And then, I could do a whole episode on the 153 enactment of Shiloh.
Let's do it one time.
Yeah, I'm not. Because Susie's going to be like, we saw it goes. And, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember that story. Yeah. I still want to go. Again, that's probably my top tier list. But again, I would want to be in a lot better shape than what I am now, and have the money to put into my gear for that one. Because I mean, that's the top of my list for me personally. Just Shiloh.
So as far as stuff that happens at Henry or Donaldson, living histories mainly because it's owned by the National Park Service. There's some stuff up there. Alexander. I think they did a hardcore retreat from Donaldson. Back during the sesquicentennial, Tucker went on that and it almost killed him.
That's not good.
Well, it was like Stitch Counter, super hardcore. Like I aspire to do that one day, one time, and that's going to be it. Anyway, we hope that you have enjoyed this episode of this rather long episode of SCV Chat. But hope tomorrow at 5:00 Standard Time, you think about the Mississippians who are getting into line, and as well as the rest of them, and then after 5:00. 7:00 Confederate Standard Time, 8:00 Eastern Time. Tune in to Look Around Southwest Florida or South Florida or Look Around Florida. Excuse me, I'll get it right one of these days. With Sean McFall. Sean, hope that he has a great show. I think he took off last week.
Yeah.
Completely understand. Completely understand. I forgot about a picture. But I hope that y'all tune in for that.
Please do.
Sean does a great job. Nope, I didn't forget a picture.
Good job.
Yeah, I don't have it. I had it uploaded in the slideshow, but I didn't download it off of Canva. It was a picture of the 21st Mississippi Infantry flag. It's at the old courthouse in Vicksburg. But tune in for Sean. Remember, we're not going to have a look around the Confederation.
No,
because it's 4th of July.
Yeah, we'll be celebrating Independence Day because if America was right in 1776, the South was right in 1861.
Yep, Secession Day, Secession, America, or the South's oldest tradition. Legally right then, legally right now. Our views and opinions. Hey, buy the shirt.
That was great, by the way. That was perfection.
Yeah. Shameless plug. Remember to join Patreon either tomorrow or Thursday. One of these days, Moose and I will be maybe Friday. I don't have to come into work on Friday. We will be recording our first episode on the book that we were reviewing.
I thought you said no spoilers.
I'm not spoiling it. I didn't show the title.
Yeah, that's a big book, ain't it? Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carl.
Don't be thanking Carl. You're the one who announced it.
I didn't.
Yeah.
That never released when we announced it.
Yeah,
we never released that podcast episode.
Well, by that point, I bought the book and started reading. So yeah, we're gonna do that. Well, we can go ahead and I guess we're gonna have to go ahead and tell them, because we are going to release the first episode. To everybody. Why'd you mute yourself?
I hit the button by accident.
We are going to release the first episode for everybody to be able to listen to, but the subsequent episodes will be released for Patreon only.
Yes.
So you have to join Patreon, patreon.com/scv_chat or scvchat.com and support us. We're doing Albion Seed for Pathways into British North America.
How you did it. You were like, he's tortured me with this.
Yeah.
It's been a long month.
David Pope, what are you doing Friday night?
I think he's taking this week off. And correct me if I'm wrong, David, from our conversations, but I think he's taking like this week off. And I think he's getting an equipment upgrade. So
equipment upgrades are worth it.
Good luck, David. I'm still trying to help you out. So I will talk.
These microphones are fantastic.
Yeah, I can show you the microphones. But share the episode. Visit scvchat.com. And of course, if you want to join the SCV, go to www.scv.org.
Hey, can you join if do we have a way for somebody who's, let's say, is doesn't have Confederate ancestry, or I don't know, it doesn't have the chromosomal ability.
Be careful.
The chromosomal ability to support us?
Well, we have a great thing for you called the Friends of the SCV. Join today.
Yeah, membership perks. What are those, Moose?
You get a membership certificate, a label pin, a 1-year
subscription. No, you did it. Lapel pin. It's a lapel pin. Lapel pin. That's lapel. And I've called you and corrected you on it before. Lapel. Sound it out. LA makes the L sound, and PEL makes the PEL sound.
Connor, it is supper time. I'm hungry. Lapel pin and a 1-year subscription to the Confederate Veteran Magazine. It is open to men and women.
That was for you, Chuck. That was for you, Chuck Mack. Subsequent donations of $35 a year or more to maintain your Confederate Veteran subscription.
Join. No. Oh, wow. Okay.
All right. In the words of the late and great Harold, why did you put up the map of Barksdale's wounded
I was scrolling down to the end credits.
Yeah, that was another map of Barksdale's wounded. Hey, if your camp wants me to come give this talk, holler at me. Philpott said it best, though. No Fumar in the elevator.
No Fumar in the elevator.